Okay, so what does writing, storytelling slash creativity mean to me? Right. I've led a blessed life so far, professionally speaking. I've worked on movies, made ads, got to be editor in chief of Tinkle Comics, which was definitely a childhood dream come true. I've even got to perform stand up on national television. And whenever people hear about what I do for a living, I have had so many of them reply, "Wow, that's so cool. I can never do what you do. I'm not creative like you." And I've heard those five words so many times I've lost count, and it always irritates me, because I genuinely think that everybody is creative, not just humans. In fact, animals are creative as well, plants are creative. Creativity is something that is inbuilt in every living organism. Now, that's the thing with AI, for example, is the world's smartest people are actively working on how to encode that creativity into artificial intelligence. And now with programs like Chat GPT, you're seeing it come alive slowly, like because to be alive is to be creative. People always talk about gut instinct and inner feeling. That's creativity at work. People always confuse creativity with, say, artistic expression. But I think nothing could be further from the truth. Writing, drawing, singing, dancing, performing, these are all but a few tiny facets of creativity. Surgeons get creative every day in operating rooms across the world, working against time to save lives. Engineers need to think out of the box all the time to save urban living problems. You see the way bridges are designed, how planes are built, how the human genome is decoded. It's all creativity at play. If you're doing something new, something that's never been done before, no matter the field of study, you're being creative. It's the same thing with storytelling. Creativity and storytelling are two sides of the same coin. People always reduce stories to once upon a time, but everyone has a story. Every action you take is a story unfolding. That's why I've always enjoyed history. It's the story of this planet and everything on it. This is where writing comes in for me on a personal level because writing is my way to contribute to this story. Everyone has different tools to put their creativity on display. Writing is my way, my tool, so to speak, my weapon of choice. My writing reflects what I've experienced, what I've read, what I've been exposed to. It sets my personal context. It's my legacy. Everything I've written so far, be it op-ed columns for newspapers, movie reviews, comic adventures in Tinkle, jokes I tell on stage, it'll always be an extension of me, for better or for worse. There's so much of my writing that I stumble across from my younger days that absolutely appalls me. I have this weird sense of disgust at my younger self. Oh my God, did I write that? But at the same time, it is a little window into who I was when I was younger. Writing is how I express myself, it's how anyone expresses themselves. I've just been very lucky that people actively pay me to write. It always baffles me. I've been paid to write my opinion on the going ons around the world. I've had the opportunity to take off on short flights of imagination, crafting imaginary worlds and characters for younger readers. I've actively worked on movie scripts as well, which has always been magical. People performing your words, physically creating the situations that you dreamed up in your head. And all this writing is me. So if you want to get to know me, just read what I write. So in short, stop saying you're not creative. Everyone is creative. Am I creative because I write? No. I'm creative just like you, therefore I write.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Kuriakose Vaisian. Kuriakose is a writer, content creator, and stand up comic. He has also worked as a journalist, assistant director, a walking tour guide, editor in chief at Tinkle Comics, and many other roles. Tune in to hear about his eclectic career choices and the experiences he's had. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Closet Writer Chronicles. This week I have with me Kuriakose Vaishyan. Welcome to the show, Kuriakose. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, the first thing I want to ask you is what is your earliest memory of being creative and when did you start writing?
All right. So, earliest memory of me being creative. So I remember I was, I think, in third standard or fourth standard, and there was an exercise in English class where we had to write a play, right?
Hmm.
and I was really into sci-fi and like that sort of aliens and traveling to space and being an astronaut and like normal boyhood dreams, so to speak. And I loved like animation and cartoons and all of that. So I would like grow up on a very healthy diet of like all sorts of animated content. So I actively wrote a play about like this uh, time travel machine, basically. Like so,
Okay.
yeah. And it turns out like so I had like a crazy twist also at the end where the time travel machine actually was not traveling back in time, but it was traveling to another planet.
Oh,
Of course, much later in life, I realized this is basically the plot from Planet of the Apes, but in reverse, right?
okay.
And I was like, yes, of course, great minds think alike. But you can't like admit that you've been like inspired, especially at that age. But it was really cool because I remember writing this thing out, and there were like six, seven of us. Like, so we were split into groups in class. And that was, I think, the first time I actively directed something in my life as a play. And we had props, and we had like costumes, and we performed this in like one part of the school library, like for our classmates in other sections. So that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the process of like writing and creating this sort of world with characters that I've made up. And it was, I mean, everyone seemed to really enjoy it, and my teachers are also like very encouraging. They were like, "Oh, this is very good. You should keep doing this," and so on. And I think that was when I realized, okay, English, that's my favorite subject. This is what I'm going to like possibly do. And so it's always been, around the arts. So it's English, history, the social sciences, political science, and so on. That's basically what I've always gravitated towards. But yeah, I've always liked making up stories in my head
Okay.
and like play acting. So even as a kid, I remember like my mom would take me to like a playground nearby, and I had like a tiny cycle, and I would pretend I was in one of those Bollywood movies and I'm the hero and I have to
Oh,
like go
wow.
fight off the villains, and I just cycle like a mad person, like like 20, 30 times around this ground. But like while I'm cycling, there's like entire plot lines like stumbling along, like like in my head. So it's always been a part of me, like like this entire idea of writing stuff, storytelling, play acting, and so on. So yeah.
So, what would you say then um made you realize that you kind of wanted to do this professionally, like, do something creative, start writing and kind of actually, make that your career path?
Oh, so my career is is purely by accident. Like, like so I
Okay.
was I was one of those kids who basically, I mean, even now I think like, for that matter, it's like I need to like be enjoying what I'm doing and just having a good time in general. And I remember like I think like ninth, tenth and all is when you start actively thinking about, you have career counseling and whatnot. And by then, obviously, I was good at English and history and the arts. And we met a career counselor in school. They had school counseling sessions. And the idea that I could write for a living was very sort of early instilled in me. And I remember after my 10th standard, even then they said, yeah, journalism, media studies, this Viscom, Masscom, that is the line you should take, that you'll be good at it. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll possibly be good at it. Because yeah, like I said, like like I started drawing little comics by myself, and I'd like staple together these books, things that I think most of us nerds have done growing up, right? Like this lovely community that we are, and of course now we rule the planet, so it's great. But back then it wasn't really like like you were seen as, oh, he's the studious kind, and you'd always find me reading somewhere in the book in the library or something like that. So yeah, so the idea of journalism and NASCOM sort of like stuck
Hmm.
for a very brief period in my 11th standard when I basically came back and we have to choose a major, like the stream that you want to go for, science, arts, or commerce. So my dad kind of like got it in my head, like you should keep your options open. Why don't you like think of something like biotechnology or genetic engineering or something like that. And I wasn't like terrible at science, but obviously it wasn't like my this thing. And I came out of the 10th with like a decent mark, so I could have gone for science if I wanted to. So I did for exactly a week, and then I called my
Okay.
dad and said, "Bro, I don't want to do this. I mean, I can like just about pass here, or you put me in arts, and I will like top the batch, like for sure. I know how to faff. I'll faff very well." And he was like, all right, it's your life. You can do whatever you want to do. Like, I mean, just remember, like, this is what you'll be switching to. So from there, so then I switched to arts, and it was the best decision of my life because I feel I really thrived in school, like especially in my 11th and 12th. I became editor of the school paper. I became like a cultural captain, so I was in charge of like all the cultural competitions. So again, like totally my wheelhouse, where we do like plays and drama, and we go to other schools to participate competitions and all that jazz. I made some great friends, lifelong friends, and that really like sort of set me up for college, where like I landed up in college in Delhi at Stevens for 3 years. This was early 2000s, and again, I directed like a one act play for like the competitions there. I was like getting involved in various other things, and from there it was like, so it was always like this writing was like just stuck, like from writing for the paper. Then I would write letters to the Hindu, because that was something you would do if you were good at
Yeah.
writing, like as a kid. I think like as I grew up and like I actually started working at a paper, I realized, oh, some of these letters are just written by staffers, because there aren't enough
Yeah.
letters coming in.
Yeah.
And uh, and I was like, oh, I was one of those kids who actually sent the letter in, like at that age. So yeah, so after college, I managed to like net a job with this with Network 18 had a subsidiary then called Tangerine, and
Hmm.
they ran an online portal called Campus 18, which is
Oh, okay.
again like a campus newspaper and stuff. So I started working there, and that sort of pulled me back into the world of like writing. And then from there, I worked my way through a bunch of journalism jobs. So I worked with Maxim. I used to write for Blender, which is a music magazine. I was with the Deccan Chronicle. I started writing for Times of India, for Indian Express at some point, which I still write for Indian Express. And while that was going great, I met someone who basically turned me to the idea of filmmaking, and they were like, we can also make films. And I used to always think that that was like something like inaccessible. Like, how does one just like start making films? How do you get into the industry? Is there like a so? Yeah, that led me to the Film Institute in Pune, and
Okay.
I studied television direction there for about a year and a half. I came out of there and I started working on ad films. I worked on a feature film down south in Malayalam as an assistant director. Then I set up my own production house, and we were doing a bunch of ad films in Cochin.
Okay.
Uh, and that sort of translated into a full-time job at ACK at Amar Katha. So again, when I joined Amar Katha, I wasn't actually part of the editorial side of things. I was actually part of their brand solutions and corporate solutions wing. So it was more client-led advertising, keeping in mind what we can do together. So a lot of brand partnerships and synergies and stuff like that. And ACK was a really fun trip, because I was there for almost 7 years. And I started out with these brand solution projects. So we had Amal Chitrakatha, we had Tinkle, and we had National Geographic publishing as well in house.
Wow.
So so it was a wide variety of clients that we'd get, and we'd be doing all these like really fun projects for them. So a bunch of like special comic books, a bunch of like advertorial magazines and stuff like that. uh, I started working again on websites, and like I learned design during my time there. I did not know how to design stuff, but I became like self-taught Adobe designer during my
Okay.
time there. And yeah, and one thing, so I'd keep like, so I was very pally with the editors of the actual editors of Tinkle and ACK, and from time to time, like they would also ask me to write stuff like stories and all that. And I really enjoyed that, because I grew up reading Tinkle, and I loved the entire world and those characters and the timeless, right? So during these 7 years, I sort of moved from, I mean, I started doing other stuff in addition to brand work. I took over like digital responsibilities for a bit editorially. So then I started working on their websites, and redesigning them and making them more like content driven and whatnot. And eventually, like by the end of 2020, there was an opening for the editorship of Tinkle itself.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, like I knew the brand inside out, and this was my shot. So I did. I shot my shot, and things worked out. And then suddenly, I found myself as editor of Tinkle magazine, which was insane.
Yeah.
I never thought. I still pinch myself, and like maybe that was just a dream. That didn't actually happen. But yeah, 2 years I spent in the editor's chair. It was really fun. We It was a fun time. Also, it's a challenging time because we were going through COVID at the time.
Yeah.
The brand was sort of repositioning itself. We went online. It was all digital because we couldn't actively physically deliver copies. So it was about how do you like sort of like keep up with that, because the online world is much more demanding. You need content every day.
Yeah.
So we went from a monthly magazine to a weekly magazine. We had special content that only came out on the Tinkle app. We were doing a whole bunch of stuff online in terms of like talk shows. I had like a an interview thing that I like talk to people like from different walks of life and sort of like a career counseling. So in my head, it was like when I was a kid, yes, they said ASCOM is good for you, but there was nothing else. I mean,
Yeah.
it would have been nice to actually talk to a journalist and see what their journey was like, right? So yeah, so we did this really fun show where I would talk to random people from different walks of life. So I had puppeteer pop up. I've spoken to Abish Mathew
Oh
about
wow.
like what it means to be like a comic. Like Neil Ghosh who runs the Robin Hood Army. So even it was really fun and like really fun things that we were doing to make it more interactive, more 360 degree. Like it's not just a comic book anymore. Like the magazine like extends in so many different myriad ways, and you have to do it all online because nobody's meeting in person and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really nice to sort of navigate that. I mean, it was a difficult time for everyone. We were able to come out of it on like, I mean, by the end of my first year as editor, we were actually seeing profits.
Okay.
So that's something I was very like excited about, that we were able to keep costs down. We were able to churn out more content. We were able to be as engaged as possible, and we did this while generating profits for the company as well. So like it was always that scare, like because with companies this old and brands this old, if you're not actively giving return on investments for your bosses,
Yeah.
they will shut it down, right? I mean, they don't
Yeah.
have an option. You can't blame them because it is a business at
It's a
the end of
business,
the day.
yeah.
It's nobody's doing like it's not a social service. You can't afford to do a social service for the scene, right? So the fact that I was able to keep the Tinkle brand alive and it will be running alive, I mean, for a good while ahead,
Yeah.
there's a great team in place. There's a brand new editor. She's amazing. She's been working with the brand for a long time. She took a short break. Now she's come back as editor. So they're going to do really great stuff. And I'm very excited for what's going to happen with them. Meanwhile, I then obviously took the decision to move out because we had this opportunity to migrate abroad. And my wife was having, I mean, she had a really good offer from this company here. And for me, it's again like, like, so what's next? Like I said, I'm not a very serious guy when it comes to like career planning or this thing. Like it's just like, okay, this is exciting, this is fun, let's do this now. Like now let's jump. So it's been 6 months here in the Netherlands, and I'm exploring the scene here. Like stand up is really fun here, and like I still write. I'm doing a bunch of consultancy on the side, and hopefully I'll start working as a copywriter somewhere very soon.
That's amazing. I love that sort of journey you've had. It's so diverse. And I think no, really, and I think you've really made it work for yourself. And I think the underlying thing of, I think what you said also really came through in terms of actually enjoying what you do. Because I feel like today that can be quite a, um I don't want to say rarity, but it doesn't, more often than not, a lot of people are not the happiest in their jobs, for a huge part of it. So it's kind of cool that in some way you've been able to make it work for yourself, where you like what you're doing and you're still able to, like, generate like revenue out of that, and sustain yourself with it, because that it's usually can be difficult to make that work.
No, no, of course, that's definitely. See, I have to check my privilege here. Again,
Yeah, yeah, of course,
I've
yeah.
been very lucky to come from, like a background where I don't have like undue financial stress, or like
Mm,
I have loans to pay off or whatever. Like, I mean, also the fact is, I've been working since I've graduated, and like, like I've gone to the best colleges, the best institution, I have the best network. Like, all of these factors come into play.
of
So
course,
it's
yeah.
yeah, so it's just I'm just very lucky. Like it's I haven't actively done anything to make it work. Like I just feel like I'm coasting through in life, and like I'm just at the right place at the right time, and it's worked out so far. So, but yeah, like obviously you need to put in the work
Yeah, of
and
course, yeah.
like, but again. It's what they say now, if you love what you do, then it's not really work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't say that 100%. I didn't love everything about it. I'm not like that. Like, oh man, it's just like passion is passion. No, it's not that. Of course, work is work. It gets to you at some times.
Yeah, of course it
But
is.
at the end of the day, if you still feel like that was the days I would get like super irritated at work, like especially at Tinkle, and I was there a long time, like
Yeah.
8 years, especially in today's day and age, it's a long time.
Yeah.
I always like think at the end of the day, listen, I'm still getting paid to read comics, which
Yeah.
is so much cooler than like what I
Yeah.
could be like doing like in life. Like
That is true.
so read and write comics is amazing. Like so there's always work stress is always there, but like you will like look at the larger picture and if it works for you, then it's easier to find like what you're doing to be meaningful and so yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's what I'm saying. It's amazing that you've been able to kind of make it work for yourself. Um, so that there are quite a few things I want to ask you. So first, I think the fact is that since you've worked in so many different mediums, so with filmmaking, comics, journalism, so then how do you sort of navigate between shifting styles of writing? Because obviously it's not the same way of writing. Like the way you'd write a TV show is not how you'd write a comic or how you'd obviously write an article. So then how do you kind of make that switch? And I don't know, have there been times where you've actually found a lot of similarity in the processes of writing for each medium, or are they just completely like different?
See, I mean, technically speaking, there are differences in the process. Like, say, for example, when you write a movie script, there's a set template you have to follow. Like, you're describing interior, exterior, daylight, whatever shot, blah, character dialogue. I mean, that is actually much closer in terms to writing a comic book because there is the idea of, you're writing in a set sort of template where there's a lot of description and it's descriptive, then there's dialogue. And dialogue writing is not as easy as, like just it's not the same as prose, right? I mean, like when you write long form and you write dialogue, it's very different. Dialogue needs to be more conversational. It needs to be more easygoing. A lot of problem with like dialogue today is that it feels like it's been written, and it's
Yeah.
not. Nobody talks like that. So you have to write the way people talk. That's how it sounds like easier and like I mean just more palatable. Like I mean, although it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like this is not how people talk, and that's why it turns you off from like what's going on. Uh, for me, again, another shift I had to do mentally was the age group I was writing for, especially during Tinkle,
Yeah.
because there you're writing for kids between 8 and 12, and it has to be a lot more conservative in terms of, like, I mean, like you said, no cursing, no, like,
Yeah.
like no graphic themes, no violence. Even if you show violence, it has to be like cartoony violence.
Yeah.
So there was a lot more like sort of mental checks that you would put in place before you commit something to the word or to the paper. Um, and that I think was taking a toll on me because I was kind of getting frustrated with the fact that I wasn't able to write everything I wanted to write, which is what kind of led me to stand up. So I
Okay.
started performing in 2017, and it was actually my outlet for writing for an older audience, right? So I would like take whatever thoughts I had bottled up during the day and put it down on a piece of paper, and then I'd go and perform it, right?
Okay.
And again, the process of writing for stand up is very different. Like like it is a performative medium, not just writing for yourself, right? So you have to uh I mean, I would write like my entire set out. Initially, I remember I would write everything down word by word, and then I'd go on stage and like just like vomit it out because like I've memorized this entire thing and I have to like just come and say it. And the more I did it, the more you could see other people doing the same thing and how unfunny it was because it doesn't feel natural. And the beauty of stand up is that it has to sound like a conversation, right? The thing is, it sounds like a conversation, but now I know that it's not a conversation. It's carefully rehearsed. It's down to the beat. Each word has been like sort of measured and weighed. The position of the word in the sentence, the way you say it, like you figure that out, and you figure that out by performing it on stage. So you keep going back on stage. You keep editing what you're doing out there. You don't stick to a script. You stick to key points, and then you like sort of like improv on stage. So again, that's a different like sort of headspace, and again, the absolute freedom to say whatever you want and like about whatever you want. When I say absolute freedom in India, that's relative again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed the like that stark difference here, where like in Europe you can say whatever you want, nobody cares. In everybody's game. I think the closest I came to getting in trouble is when I cracked a Hitler joke,
Oh
and then they
wow,
were like, "Bro,
okay.
okay, Hitler is like that is a." But they laughed. Though. I mean, my friends were like, maybe you shouldn't crack jokes about Hitler, but like the Germans in the audience were laughing, so I don't know. They seem fine. So yeah, I mean, there is like a switch, but also I feel like when you know who you're writing for, because like that's the thing. Like for me, it's always I'm writing for an audience.
Right.
So if it's for the newspaper, then the newspaper is obviously like if I'm writing an op-ed piece, then it is my opinion. But at the same time, I am like like keeping in mind, okay, the readership is this, or like this is what I want to convey, and this is what I feel strongly about. At the same time, if I'm writing a story for Tinkle, then I know my audience again. They'll enjoy this. They want fun. They want adventure. And stand up again is so like rooted in like what the audience is laughing at, right? I mean, whatever you think is funny is not always funny,
Yeah.
which you realize painfully on stage when there's absolute silence for like 3 minutes,
Oh
which
wow.
can feel like 30 minutes. So yeah, I mean, when you bomb really hard, right? But when they laugh, though, oh my God, that feeling. I mean, that's what everyone's chasing, right? And you still keep going back to get that reaction. So yeah, I mean, if you keep in mind who the audience is, it's very easy to make that switch.
Hmm.
Yeah,
No, that's actually a really nice way of looking at it, of actually, kind of looking at who are you actually catering the piece for.
yeah.
Which is interesting when you even mentioned it for like an opinion piece, for like an op-ed, because it is essentially, it's what you personally do possibly feel about something, but at the same time, you know that it's going to be read by a
These many
certain section
people,
of people.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't just shoot your mouth, right? I mean, whatever you're saying, you have to be prepared to back it up. Like it's not the
Yeah.
internet, right? I mean, it is
Yeah.
being published on the internet, but it's still. I mean, I would like to say like, yes, I wrote that and I stand by it. Like I don't want to be like, well, I just said whatever because I'm having a bad day or whatever. No, that's not how it works. But again, like it's like if you're like writing your like a blog or a diary, then your audience is you.
Yeah.
So like again, so that always informs you always have an audience. Like, the idea that even when you're writing for yourself, there is an audience, like it's not like there isn't. Like so I think like that automatically sort of defines the way you write and makes it easier to like figure out what you want to write, what you want to say.
Yeah, no, for sure. And since you brought up stand up, that is, of course, one of the things I did want to talk to you about is how did you really get into it? Because I know you mentioned that it was kind of like an outlet, because when you were working at Tinkle, you kind of needed a space where you could put out everything else that was like going on in your head or whatever, or just, kind of like an outlet for other thoughts. So how did you really, get into stand up? And, when did you decide that, okay, I want to give this a shot and like, go on stage and see how it is?
So I remember the first time I went on, this was at the Habitat in Khar in Mumbai. And I think Kunal Kamra was hosting,
Okay.
and he was really funny. And he was able to get like the audience to like really respond to whatever he was saying and doing on stage. And for me, I've always liked like like being the center of attention that way, like on stage where you have the entire audience like in rapture. And then I've had that experience like a few times in school and college when you perform like in a play, or you act, or you do whatever. And I've always loved stand up. Like I've been watching stand up since like first year of college, like I mean,
Okay.
yeah. So like from like like I think everyone in India, like a big gateway guy was Russell Peters. And then
Mm.
with Russell Peters I sort of discovered like everybody else. So I started watching a lot of Chris Rock, a lot of Eddie Murphy. I went back and like discovered Carlin, Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, and, like, Mitch Hedberg. And like so there was a lot of people over the years that I would consistently watch, and like it was always something that seemed amazing.
Mhm.
But again, just like filmmaking, I didn't think that I could do it. Like
Okay.
they don't tell you, okay, this is where you sign up. And I mean, now I realize they do tell you this is where you sign up, this is what you do. Unless you actively go looking for these things, like it doesn't just pop up on your radar. Okay, maybe I'll do it. Like so. It was literally like one night I was really frustrated with work. Now, like maybe I should find another job, and I started like looking like at like LinkedIn and whatnot. And then I came across this thing that said open mic, and I was like, "What is an open mic?" Oh, I know what an open mic is. I didn't know they did this in the city. So Me and my wife decided, okay, let's go check it out. And so we went, and I was like, okay, I can do what these guys are doing, because an open mic is also, it's very raw, and like like there are a lot of people who are first timers, done it a couple of times. Everyone's jokes don't land. Some people's do. So you see the good and the bad of it, right? And you're like, okay, maybe I can try doing this and it'll be fun. And if I'm funny, then that's something to chase, right? So after that, I landed up at the Habitat, and the Habitat was called the Tuning Fork back then, and they had an open mic every Tuesday, and people would come from all across Bombay. They had like 20 spots, and there would be like 50 people like vying for a spot. So there'd be this long line outside, just signing up, signing up. So people who didn't get spots basically ended up becoming your audience.
Oh,
So there was like a captive audience also, and the Habitat always had um, like the big names from like stand up today in India, like they would be performing there and like hosting and whatnot. So I did my first one, and it didn't go terribly. Like I mean, I wasn't like, now I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, it was so bad. I was just waffling, like like repeating the same thing over and over again. I didn't have like a punchline per se. It was just a funny story that people politely smile at. But I walked off stage that day thinking, "Fuck, I killed it." I was so funny, dude. Like it was so good, and I wasn't. But and see, I can say that now confidently that I wasn't, because I got better, like,
okay.
and then I realized, okay, this is good, or this is good. And even now I'm like, okay, now I'm okay. Like, I still haven't, like, I need like that, like that 1 hour tight where I'm like getting a laugh like every, so I'm at about like 15 minutes now, and I've been doing this like what, 5 years.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's gonna take a while. But also I feel like, because like a huge motivator for me to keep going back on stage was the fact that this wasn't my day job, right?
Mm.
So I wasn't doing it out of like the fact that oh, I have deadlines to meet, or I have to like make this much money of comedy, or I have to like sign these many corporate shows, or get these many views on YouTube. Like none of that mattered for me. It was just going on stage, saying my piece, getting people to laugh, and when they laughed, it was like such a rush, you know.
Mm.
And yeah, and that, like I was able to like sort of build that. I just made it more and more. Like a part of my life, right? So like I knew like every Tuesday they would have like the open mic at Tuning Fork. So I'd go there, and I diligently went there for I think almost 4 months. Every week I was there doing this. And as I did it more and more, and my set kept getting better, I threw out a bunch of jokes, I added a bunch of jokes. Other comics also, other producers, like, they started like, at some point, I guess they started noticing what I was doing, or they had seen me perform, or they had performed on the same show as me. So then I started getting calls to like other mics, and like then slowly, steadily, I sort of made my way into produce shows, and I started hosting gigs. And before I knew it, I was part of the scene. Like like suddenly, like I knew all of these guys, and I would hang with them. Like like we'd perform together, and yeah, I was doing well enough to get like longer spots. You start out with 4 minutes. That's basically the Bombay standard. Is 4 minutes is what you get.
Okay.
And by the time I left Bombay in 20, I mean, last year, early last year, so I was doing like half an hour from the 4 minutes. So like me and another friend, we had like a special where we were doing half an hour each. And so that's the journey essentially, like from 4 minutes to 30 minutes on stage, where like 4 minutes where I was terrible, half an hour where I'm still terrible, but like slightly more confident in my terribleness. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's basically how I got into it full time. I think at some point also the fact that like I made it onto Comedy Central,
Yeah, you
and
did
that
a
was,
show.
yeah, I did a show, and that was I mean, so all these things are huge confidence boosters, no? Like I mean, it says, okay, you're doing something right, okay, because we're very insecure people, comedians. That's why we do this. No, we go like up, get up on stage, and like like brave that, oh, nobody's gonna laugh. It's super insecurity. We just want validation. That's like comics. All we're all about just validation. Validate my sense of humor. Validate my jokes. Make me feel good about myself as a person. You know, and so every little thing is like a sort of like step in that direction. Like so when producers are like, okay, you're good. Why don't you come and do this? Or when people, I mean, obviously, people laughing is your biggest validation, but all these other things sort of add up, right? So the Comedy Central thing was like, I mean, it was a huge morale booster for me.
Mm-hmm.
and it was a fun experience, and I had great time with like my fellow comics on that show. They were really great bunch of people. But of course, like once that ended, it was supposed to be like 2020 was the year that I really capitalized on that, and we all know what happened in 2020. So yeah, but yeah, so like now, like it's that. So like for me here, especially after shifting to the Netherlands, it's that's what I'm really enjoying, like the stand-up scene here. Because again, it's like starting from scratch, and I'm like getting back and like getting the mics and meeting producers, and it's those little things again, where producers like started calling me like, "Hey, why don't you come and do a spot here?" And the difference, the biggest difference I think between Europe and India is like, "Yeah, come, we'll pay you." I was like, "What?
Wow.
People get paid for this shit?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
Unpaid
pretty good.
labor is a long-standing story in India.
Yeah, in India it's hobby है ना, तू hobby
It-
करना, hobby
yeah.
अच्छी बात है, सबको होना चाहिए hobby.
Oh my God.
But
Unpaid
no,
internship, yes.
oh yeah, no, in
That's
India, like definitely, if you go there is money to be made in comedy. It's not that there isn't. Like we're doing, so there are a lot of my like fellow comics who do corporate shows, and they get regular, like they're regular on the corporate circuit, and like,
mm,
and for me, it was never a priority. Like I said, because it wasn't my day job. I didn't need to like depend on comedy to like make my bread and butter. And the entire point for me doing comedy is so that I get to say what I want to say, how I want to say it. Again, if I have to go to corporate and there are a bunch of rules and regulations, HR will tell you can do this, you can't do that. And I'm
mm.
like, no, this is what I didn't want to, you know. But yeah, now that I'm here and I'm like sort of like coasting, like again, corporate shows, best. Anybody has corporate shows, please reach out.
Oh, okay, cool.
Happily
If
given.
yeah, so this is a call for
Yeah.
if you're looking
Any
for a
money,
stand-up
yeah.
comic,
Yeah.
just reach out to Kuriakose.
Yep.
I'll put his social media details in the description.
Perfect.
Just reach
Anything.
out.
Birthdays, marriages, divorces, death days, funerals, I'll perform at all of them. It's great.
Stand-up comic right here on the scene emerging. But yeah, no. But then, okay, do you have a process for writing comedy or like a routine basically? Since you've been doing this for 5 years now. Now, obviously, you will kind of need content or basically something to work with, right, before going on stage. So how do you kind of then come up with, what you're going to say, the process of refining it? So what is your, like, do you have a routine that, okay, every day for this much time I'm going to sit and like actually like write and work on stand up comedy before like going and performing, or I'll perform this many times a week? So what is it like for you?
I wish I was that disciplined in life. Uh, I mean, I always think, yeah, like I should start like setting aside like 1 hour a day just to write. And it's not just stand up, no, like I mean, I'm still working on my movie script. That's been in the works for 10 years now. And I've written maybe like 3 pages, you know. But it's stand up is a little different. Like I still do write out my entire bit. So I have like, what do you say, a hit of inspiration from somewhere. Or, like this new thing I'm writing right now is about signatures and how it's difficult to like sign. Like
Oh,
especially
okay.
for me, like I can never sign the same sign twice.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, because my first, I mean, I have a very one complicated name and I want to be artistic about it. And obviously, like it becomes weird. And now, like, I think I have somewhat of a signature that sort of matches every time. But I had to update my signature at the bank and I signed that signature like 12 years ago. So it's completely like I've never seen that sign before. I've never signed this. And I went to the bank, and then at one point, I was literally sitting with like four bank employees, and they're all showing me how to sign my own sign. They're like, "This is how you do it,"
wow.
yeah, you take this turn here and you do this. And like I was like, "Bro, this is a bit, right?" So I came home and I wrote out this entire bit about like how I can't sign the same sign. Then while you're writing, there are stupid jokes that pop in your head. This is why I can never quit my job because I can't re-sign. You know, and yeah, see, this is a joke I'll have to throw out because it's terrible, right? But so you write everything. You write every single tag, every single like throwaway joke that you can think of, and then I will take it on stage and I will like spit it out, verbal diarrhea, verbatim, and see what sticks. It's like literally you take like a giant bucket of jokes and then throw it at a wall and like see what sticks, and then whatever sticks you go back home with, and you work that up, and whatever doesn't you throw out because that's where it belongs, right? And then it's a matter of like refining it, like because see, this it's a weird profession. It's a weird what do you say, style of performance in the sense you can't practice. You can't like
Okay.
you see you can practice singing at home and you can
Yeah.
practice playing an instrument and you can't practice stand up at home because
Oh
stand
yeah.
up only works if you have an audience, right? You can stand in front of a mirror and say as many jokes as you want, but like it doesn't count for anything because does the audience think it's funny? Like, is it actually funny? Are you hitting like, like your laughs per minute and like are your tags in place or is your setup proper? Is your punchline working? Like, how does it work in the larger scheme of things? And you'll only know this like once you go up on stage. So the only way to do that is you go up on stage as many times as you can, right? And here, like, it's not again just because you want to go up on stage doesn't mean you're going to get to go up on stage, right?
Yeah.
So like it depends on the producer, it depends on the show, the capacity, the time of the day, like if an audience shows up. So that's the other side of that is the hustle where you're basically getting in touch with producers, you're signing up for spots left, right, and center. You try to be out and about as much as possible, and you sort of balance that with the rest of your life. Like, so it's a two-way thing. So it's the writing is just one small chunk of stand-up. You write, sure. Then you need a place to perform it. Then you go up and perform it. Then hopefully something sticks. Then you think, okay, then you record whatever you're saying so you can hear it back later. Then you come home, you're like, okay, I'll take this out, I'll put this in. Then you rewrite it, and then you're like, okay, I need another place to perform this. And then again you go up. So it's that cycle till you finally have it distills down to like a bit, that's tight.
Mm.
And then okay, this, I'm gonna get laugh here, laugh here, laugh here. And this works consistently, So yeah, it is a process of like refining and refinement, consistent refinement. Uh, yeah,
No,
but it's
definitely.
fun. Yeah, it's fun though when it pays off. Like, and you have an audience that's on the same wavelength and they're laughing at everything you're saying. Best feeling on the planet. Yeah, like I mean,
So,
drugs don't make you feel as good.
oh my
So
God.
yeah, I mean that's basically I think why people do drugs is like get that feeling. You see, feel so satisfied with yourself, like so smug. Comics who kill, like they come off the stage, they look so smug in life. They're like, dude, I figured everything out. Like this is who I am right now. Like I am the greatest. It really is a feeling of like you're on top of the
Euphoria.
world. Yeah, yeah, euphoric, like proper euphoria.
Okay.
And even now, like you go on stage. Every time I go on stage, and I'm constantly nervous. Like like
Okay.
my heart's racing. I can feel my this thing rising, and I'm having palpitations while I'm performing.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it's a constant state of this thing. So when it doesn't pay off, like that, it's equally like destroying. Like you're completely like, oh my god, made a complete fool of myself. But when it pays off, so then you come off like it's the best. Yeah.
Wow. So then wait, so then while performing, and since you've been doing this for 5 years, so then what's been uh I don't want to say worst, but yeah, I guess an experience where you really like you didn't get any laughs at all and you were just like, oh my
Oh,
God.
those are too many to count.
And you were
Yeah.
just questioning why am I here doing like the ones that gave you a major existential crisis. Because I feel like everyone goes through those anyway. And also that moment of like, oh my God, yes, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So like, can you mention some
All right.
moments like
So
that?
no, so like worst performances, or that's every time I try new material, like more often than not, I'm not performing like for the audience. Like I mean, they are not responding. Like there are like there's too many to count. Like I mean, bombing is as much part of a comic's life as writing jokes. Like you will bomb. Like it is inevitable. Like no matter how good a comic you are, unless you cross a certain threshold and you're like too big, like at which point you can't fail. At least while performing. Like, because you go on stage and you have an audience who come that will laugh at everything you say. So they
Hmm.
will laugh. But like when you're starting out and like it's you're still like, doing the open mics, you're still building material. Bombing is like very, very natural. Like, I mean, it took me a while to accept that this is normal, this is okay. Like it's fine to bomb. The idea is that you don't stop because you bombed at a mic, right? And I think like I mean, in fact, the first Couple of times I did it at the Habitat, I got like some laughs. The third time I did it, I got zero laughs, and I was like, "Oh my God,
Oh.
why am I doing this?" And but then it wasn't just me who was getting zero laughs. There are other people also getting zero laughs. Then you see how the audience was, what they're responding to. In the zero laughs, did you get even a chuckle somewhere? Then you can maybe work on that. So you sort of like try and use that to your advantage as well. And another thing is, if you feel that the audience is not working at all, then just say whatever you want, man. Like it doesn't really matter. Like I was in Cochin actually last month, and I performed at a mic in Cochin, and I remember like so it was like a co-working space, and there were about like four other comics on the lineup, and this guy he was hosting, and he was trying his level best to get them to like like come alive, but they were just being very like just sitting back, like hands folded, no reaction. There was maybe one or two people slightly smiling. There was one guy in the back who was talking to like a friend. There's one dude on the phone, like a very disinterested audience, right? So this host is working his material, nothing's like really like sticking. These three guys go up before me. They're also like, and it's not like they're not funny. Like, I mean, they have good jokes. I can hear them. I'm laughing outside. These guys can probably hear me laughing outside, and they're just like, why is this guy laughing so much? So at which point, like, when by the time it was time for me to go on stage, I had literally sort of given up on the mic. I was like, yeah, these guys aren't going to laugh at anything. So might as well go out there and say whatever you want. So I went out and I started scolding the audience. I was like, what's wrong with you guys? These guys are going to like commit suicide right because of you and all of that.
Oh my
And
God.
that got them to laugh. Suddenly they were like very like jovial, like so it depends on like how what you do with the audience and like what you do at the night. A lot of it is bluster, dude. Like it's just confidence. Like I said, it's an act. We do it on stage. Most of us do it in life. Like like you just pretend to be confident. You just pretend to be outgoing. Then you are, and the whole room will respond accordingly. So yeah, but like times I felt like really really good about doing this. I remember in Kerala again. I was opening for Naveen Richards,
Okay.
and yeah, so he was performing in Cochin, and there was an audience of about 300 people, and it's a smallish audience, especially like comedy standards. But by Cochin, it's a decent crowd, right? And it was the first time my parents and my in-laws came out to see me do stand-up, like in
Okay.
person, because
Oh wow.
they've been hearing about me about doing stand-up and whatnot. And oh, I killed that show. I did so well. Like, I felt so good about myself getting off stage because everyone was like they understood exactly like everything that I was talking about. They were right there. And yeah, like after the show, I was getting a bunch of people come up. I had like old classmates, like like who were in the audience. I didn't know that they were in the audience, and they were like, "Dude, you were so funny. We didn't even realize you were performing today." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, this feels good." And my parents and in-laws were also like, "Okay, maybe let him keep doing comedy. It's fine." Like evidently there is an audience for him.
Oh my God.
Because like my the kind of stuff that I want to like crack jokes wise, it's not gonna fly with like a certain generation. Because like so then how do you justify like what you're doing like on stage? And then, now I can tell them, you see, I have my own audience for this, like, who get me, who get what I'm saying, who enjoy what I'm saying. So it's fine. You guys don't. I can't make everyone laugh. I think that's another thing I sort of like accepted very early on is that you can't please everyone, and that's okay. You don't have to. Like you have your audience, you will find your audience, which I think is very similar to writing also. Like like it's very subjective, right? Like what you would
Yeah.
find funny or what you would find a good book or an interesting book. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same for everyone. Like there are a lot of people out there who love Chetan Bhagat. Good
Yeah.
for them. Like I personally don't find Chetan Bhagat very interesting, but I'm not gonna like belittle someone for liking Chetan Bhagat also, because if nothing else, a lot of people have started reading because of Chetan Bhagat.
That is true.
So, and it's sad and unfortunate, but true. So so yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. So you can't really. I mean, it's like art is very subjective, dude. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I don't get. That doesn't mean it's not good or bad. Like who am I to judge? But as a creator, that is very comforting because it's also like you don't have to like my work. Everyone doesn't have to like my work, but I have my audience who does. And I do
Yeah.
this with them.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, different strokes for different folks, right?
yeah.
Like it really is different things work for different people. But yeah, since you spoke about your parents and your in-laws watching you do stand up, what are and just generally, I guess, throughout your career and everything you've done till now, What are some misconceptions or assumptions you've heard, like from people, just regarding like your career choices and stuff you've done? It could either be stand up or just anything you, or even say working, for a children's comic book for that matter, or anything. Like, what are the most bizarre things you've heard or stuff that people may have asked or said to you, and you're just like, no.
So, see, that's the thing. Like most people back home, especially in my family, extended family, and all of that, like they just, he does something creative. He's a creative. He's a creative person. I think that's where this like sense of like irritation also comes. Like, bhai, I'm not. It's not everybody's creative. Like stop saying like, oh, I'm a creative person. Like like you're also creative. Everyone, you can also do creative things. People do creative things all the time. You wouldn't term it creative because of I don't know for some reason there's this mental block that oh creativity only means this. You know, but like for my mother right now, she was asking me, what do I tell? So right now in Amsterdam, I'm like, I mean, I do stand up. I also do walking tours of Amsterdam. Like, so that's something I took up on the side. So I take a bunch of like stranger white people around, mostly white people.
Wow.
Yeah, and I tell them about the history of the city and stuff like that. And which is actually, I majored in history in college. This is the first
Yeah,
time in 20 years I've actually used that degree.
that's
So
amazing.
yeah, so it's really fun. But again, my mom's like, so what do I tell people that you do? I'm just telling everyone you're a journalist. So I'm like, I am a journalist, but I'm also a copywriter, and I also do this. He's like, yeah, yeah, but journalist is easy. I'll just tell them journalist. Journalist feel like journalist. Okay, I'm like, fine, whatever you want to say, bro. So yeah, like I mean, like my grandmother, for example, she's very confused as to what I do in life. She can't understand it. For a while, I was like a journalist. Then I got into filmmaking, and she was like, "Oh, like, what do you mean filmmaking?" I was like, like all Malayalam movies you see, na? Like, I'll also work on Malayalam movies. She's like, "Oh, what you'll act in them?" I'm like, "No, I won't act in them." There are other things also that like.
Yeah.
And then when I moved from there, I started working on comic books. She's like, "What is comic books?" I'm like, like Balarama and all in Kerala, you get like that only, but in English. Like, oh, so you draw now? And I'm like, no, I write. It's always like, you keep them guessing. Never let them know what your next move is. So yeah, but yeah, like I mean, again, like I don't have. Thankfully, I don't live at home. So like I've been out of the house since since school. Like, and I shifted to a boarding school in ninth standard, and and then like for my graduation, I went off to Delhi. So I've been living like pretty much on my own for a good while. So it's just summers and all where I have to like tell people, oh, this is what I do. You know,
But it's
but
never like got into you.
well, no, not really. I mean, I don't expect people to also understand as much because there is a traditional mindset now. Why either engineer or doctor? That's what you do now. To like MBA, MBA is the new thing. You know, so if you do MBA, then yes. What I do, like, I mean, it's I just tell them the places I worked at, so that sort of like puts it in
Okay.
context. Like, so I worked on Malayalam Manorama for a bit, and they're like, "Oh, Manorama, okay," or like stuff like that. It's easier. So right now, also like, what are you doing in Netherlands? Yeah. So what are you doing in Netherlands? Oh, I'm a consultant. Okay, consultant finance. Yeah.
No, because I did want to ask about the tour guide thing also, because I found it really fascinating that you went and you decided to also do this. Yeah, why did you decide to become a tour guide? Like, what drove that decision?
So the basic there was this call by this company that was looking for tour guides, and it was never an active thing in my head. Like I always liked the idea of like walking around a city and like sort of getting to know it a little bit, and like also I loved Killikum. I don't know if you've seen Killikum. This is a Malayalam movie with
Mohanlal,
Mohanlal. Yeah,
Revati. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and he's a tour guide in that, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think like it's some like it's a very like it's a romanticized sort of profession where you can like walk around the city and like just do these things. And given the fact that I'm between jobs right now, like it was a fun time. Like here I can do anything. The entire like appeal for me shifting here was the fact that oh you can do anything that you want here and it's great like like and I have time and I have the benefit of time right now on my hands so it wasn't I actively went out looking okay now I want to be tour guide let's do tour guide I came
Yeah.
across this company and their name fascinated me they're called Rude Bastards right and I was like these guys sound interesting and they do politically incorrect walking tours
Okay,
so the
interesting.
idea is that you do like it's a very sort of comic-y version of the history of the city and the various sites you see, very tongue-in-cheek, a lot of politically incorrect humor. So for me, it like sort of like really leaned into stand-up. Like it
Yeah.
kind of like the sort of crosses over, right? Because I have captive audience for 2 hours. I walk around and I tell them jokes, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it makes sense. And they'll pay me at the end of it. So again, yeah, that's good. I'm not going to say no to like free money, right? So that and the fact that walking tour means I don't need to join the gym because I'm getting my steps in every day. So yeah, all around it's win-win-win. Like
Yeah.
so that's how I got into it. And just you meet interesting people, right? For me, it was like yeah, you just like see like who's out there. And, like if I've come this far, I might as well like do whatever I can at this age,
Oh, no, that's it's so cool because the reason, like, when I was looking up just stuff you've done career-wise, and I saw this, and I was like, oh my god! And I was just thinking of another guest I spoke to on this season, Andrew Prashant. He goes by CG Salamander. Uh,
Yeah, I know CG
so
Salamander.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Salamander started out as a tour guide with story trails in Chennai, and then got into publishing. So I was like, oh my god, this is like another person who's also like kind of doing this. So I was just very fascinated, and I was like, oh my god, this is interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Now,
yeah,
I was in publishing and now I've got into tour guiding.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, wow, this is like a
So that,
reverse
yeah.
sort of
I don't think
situation.
both industries have money though. We
Uh,
all get like equally the same. But
yeah,
yeah.
we will not get into the reality of publishing and what actually goes there. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
But also, then speaking about content, the other thing I wanted to ask you is, who are some not just writers but even like content or create content creators that have really influenced you in terms of the type of content you like, the kind of stories you like, and this could be like not just content creators or writers, but just in terms of like films, music, TV shows, anything like something that really stuck with you.
This is a very loaded question because I mean there's so
Right?
many. I mean
Oh
how
yeah.
do you like narrow like these things down, man? Because I mean like I said, I've grown up like just immersed in content. I'm like truly the 90s television generation. We grew up in front of a TV screen. And I think I came out okay, which is why like when today's parents, like I have a 3-year-old, like I said, like today's parents are all like, oh, screen time, you have to cut down screen time, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm fine. I think I'm fine. Like, like if anything, I only feel more enriched by the stuff I watched and the stuff I read growing up. So like growing up, it was a lot of cartoons. I watched pretty much every single cartoon that was available. So, and that automatically led to an interest in comics from a very young age. So I would read like the funnies in the newspaper, and like that was like that's what I. In fact, my piece for Express also starts about how that was the only page I was interested in was the comic page on in the newspaper, right? And that like sort of like turned me on to like the I mean the idea of like telling a joke in like 3 panels or like 5 panels, 6 panels. So you read like of course you have Archies and Tinkles and
Yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes and Garfields and all of that. But you also read like more like obscure stuff, like especially by Indian standards. You don't see it as often here. So like Hagar the Horrible, the Beetle Bailey, or the Dagwood and Blondie and like Marvin, like and it was just I think from very young age, like the idea of being funny, like sort of really stuck.
Mm,
So like uh, my earliest influences would be like Looney Tunes, like Bugs Bunny,
yeah.
for example. Yeah, I still remember there was this girl that I really liked. Okay, and I was like in like first standard or second standard, proper puppy love, right? And she landed up in my house one day because her parents had come and she was magically in my house. Now, oh my God, she's out of school in my house. It's kind of like, and we were watching like Bugs Bunny cartoons together. And there was this one cartoon that I knew like inside out. Like I could like perform it because I would perform it like while the cartoon was on. And I performed it for her.
Oh
And
wow.
she was on the floor laughing. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to make people laugh. Like I think at that point it locked that I want to be like a funny person, right? But I was also very nerdy. So like I didn't have like, there are like those, I wasn't like the class clown, at least till like 11th standard. Like, till then I was still very academic, but like in my heart of heart, I knew this is who I wanted to be, right?
Mm,
That like I mean, of course, there was that side of it, and then the entire superhero genre. So like I mean, your Spider-Mans and your Batmans, and I got majorly into that during college, where I started discovering guys like like Alan Moore Frank Miller, and reading those sort of graphic novels. Also, you read Sin City for the first time, or Watchmen for the first time, and I mean, along the way, of course, there was another entire set of like just children's literature. So your Enid Blytons, and so your Famous Fives and Secret Sevens. So then you grew up a little bit and you start reading J.K. Rowling, and then you start reading C.S. Lewis and or even Tolkien, which like blew my mind when I read Lord of the Rings for the first time. So this entire world of like, I mean, I love the idea of world building. So that really like stuck. Even so Amar Chitrakatha also played a huge role in terms of like introducing me to things like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, or even the Bible, which because I come from Christian family, so we would have those Bible stories. So anything that told a story like basically appealed to me. And like I never like reading non-fiction. Like, I would like shun non-fiction like, and now I feel like I should have read more non-fiction as a kid because I was so into the world of fiction, and like, that's basically what I wanted to write. That's what I wanted to read. That's what I wanted to perform. Uh, and then I think by the time like we hit the era of torrenting, and like suddenly we had access to TV shows and seasons of it like come out together, and that was like a different like rabbit hole that I went down. I think like 5 6 years I was just watching like television like back to back, like binge watching. I was binge watching before binge watching was a thing, like before Netflix and all of that. But I had hard disks and like like just piled up that we were all like swapping in college. So we had started watching a bunch of stuff like The West Wing and Studio 60. Aaron Sorkin, I loved him. I love his work. Even now, like I love his work. And then you watch the greats, right? Even when it comes to movies, you watch your Scorsese's and your Coppolas, and FTI was amazing that way because the amount of cinema that you're exposed to, people you've never heard of, and then you go watch it and you're like, wow, this guys, how do they even think like that? Like, where does this come from? And at the same time, Malayalam cinema also played a huge role in
Yeah.
like this
Same.
world building. Like I loved it, dude. Like I mean, now like a lot of that I watch, like there is this trigger that goes off, like, oh, this is politically incorrect, and this is like this wouldn't fly today. But the humor I've always
Yeah.
found like their humor is other level humor.
Yeah, that's
Like the
true.
way they do wordplay and the way they react, like, and some guys like you have actors like Siddiq and Jagdish and all
Yeah.
who just like
Innocent. Yeah.
innocent Jagdi and all, like they're so funny. Like the comic time is impeccable. Like they were like, I feel like Jagdi and all like really missed out on the age of like social media because like
That's true.
he would have been like, I would follow his Twitter account,
Yeah.
like like.
But even Srinivasan and like Mukesh and so
Yeah,
they're all
yeah,
like
she was like,
amazing. Yeah.
so there was a certain, I mean, so the writing was so rich, and then you look back and you see that the Malayalam movie industry was one where directors and script writers were given as much significance and importance as the actors themselves. Like so
Yeah, for
Srinivasan
sure.
like pops up, or you have like your an Ivy Shashi, or you have Priyadarshan, for example.
Yeah.
Or Siddiq Lal, like how
Mm.
they're writing and directing, they're doing the dialogues, and it's like it's a different like sort, and because again you have this very strong what do you say, the Kalabhavan school, and
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
influx of like a talent from there. So people who've done stage shows, comedy skits, mimicry. This is the background of so many of them, like Jairam and
Yeah.
so Dilip also for that matter. I mean, I used to love Dilip's films, and
Oh, he's
and of course.
hilarious. He's
He
entertaining.
he's really entertaining, and his original run of movies is so good. And now, obviously, I can't watch anything that has Dilip in it because he's cancelled. In my head, I've cancelled him, right? And it's really sad. Like it's that it goes back to separating the art from the artist and all of that jazz. But it's difficult to watch him now, And I feel that like I've just missed out like on because he was hugely talented. Like his comic timing is impeccable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, so yeah, wide, huge variety of like influences. I mean, I haven't even mentioned Star Wars and Star Trek and all of that, which is also like another thing. But it's always been, I've been lucky to hang with people who've been introducing me to new stuff, on a daily basis. And then especially, I think through college, post college, like through my FTI stint, like I have some amazing friends who really know like their stuff, and now I think it's become so easy also to like watch like different kinds of things.
Yeah.
Uh, Nowadays, I'm really fascinated by like Korean dramas and like how they're able to build like, I mean, it's amazing. They do one season with 16 episodes, but that 16 episodes like they're basically a very finessed version of Bollywood, is what
Yeah,
I feel,
true.
because they
True.
have everything. They have drama, they have action, they have intrigue, they have betrayal, and each episode is like an hour. They issue 16 movies. It's 1.5 hours long. Each movie, each episode is an hour and a half. That's a movie. 16 movies, and like Marvel's like, oh, we've just done like Phase 4. I'm like, dude, Korea did that like years ago. What's wrong with you guys? Why are you guys getting so excited?
Yeah, no, for sure. No, because it's always I love asking this question to all my guests to just
I
see that.
hate hearing that question because suddenly it's like, oh my God, top five now. Like, how do you like you can't like there's so many that I haven't mentioned. I possibly
I
even
know.
remember. Now tomorrow when I'm having a shower, I'll be like, yeah, I should have mentioned that also. Forgot to talk about this person also, like, but yeah.
But no, it's just that no, because it's interesting to hear from like different people because like different things will also like stick with you, right? Like you kind of also sometimes realize, oh, there's actually a certain type of story that's sticking to me, or like, there's something that I'm really resonating with, and that's been a constant throughout whatever it is I'm consuming, even, as a
That's true,
reader or
definitely.
whatever.
Even now,
So
like for example, growing up, like there wasn't like the idea of watching an English TV show was, I didn't like serious stuff because as a kid, I mean, it was always comedy. I wanted the sitcom, right? So I remember one of the first sitcoms I saw actively was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right?
okay.
Yeah, and that sort of led to an interest in rap. So for a lot of people, like rap is like they start with Tupac and Biggie. I'm that idiot kid who started with Will Smith, because he's clean image family man. Obviously he wasn't slapping people on stage at that point in time, right? And I was like, oh, Will Smith. And then like from Will Smith, I was like, oh, dude, like this is a really cool like sort of genre. And then I discovered Eminem, right? So it's a very like sort of seamless jump. But and I mean, and like so, Fresh Prince was like a sitcom like sort of that I was really into, and then Full House, and then there was Small Wonder, there was Wonder
Yeah.
Years, and as I grew up, I kept seeking out like that sort of content. So I started watching all sitcoms, everything on Z English. It was Z English, it wasn't Z Cafe then, it was Z English. And like they used to have like a nice run. They had Caroline in the City, and they had Will and Grace, and I was watching only that till I think I saw The Wire, and I was like in college, and I was like, bro, drama is where it's at, like then my like sort of interest. So it's a very organic sort of like, okay, then you discover new stuff, and then like 10 years later you're watching Breaking Bad, being like, dude, this is it. This is the epitome of like what television should be for everyone, like it doesn't get better than this.
Yeah.
And
Or
then they make the
Stranger
man
Things.
Stranger Things, yeah. Like that's the thing. So they keep doing something. So it was Breaking Bad, then Stranger Things happened, and we binged that. Me and my wife binged that in a night. We came home from work 10 o'clock. By 6 o'clock in the morning, we're done. We're like, bro,
Oh my
that was
God.
totally worth it. And then now, like, I mean, for example, what Star Wars is doing with their television shows is amazing. Like, The Mandalorian is really good. Andor was mind blowing. Like, like again, how do they do this? I'm always in awe of like content creators. How do they do this? Like, and stand up also, like I mentioned earlier, it was like like Chris Rock was someone I really like ironically Will Smith and Chris Rock in the same breath.
Yeah.
And other guys like there was this guy called Louis Black, who I saw a lot when I was younger. He's this very snarky, very angry guy. He looks like he's about to have a heart attack on stage every single time he's
Oh
performing.
my God.
But very very funny guy, like super nasty. And I sort of discovered, oh, I like dark humor. Like I'm into this.
Ah,
Like
okay.
so that's what like so even like the so I don't know if some people ask like, so who are comics you try to like emulate when you're on stage and all of that. And I've realized that I don't want to emulate anyone, but like these are people I enjoy watching. Like
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm going to be watching this guy called Dylan Moran later in the month. He's got a great show called Black Books that came out 10, 12 years ago, like 3 seasons. It's I think like 18 episodes. Some of the funniest writing I've ever like come across. It's so funny. Uh, stellar cast also. And three people, they run a bookshop. That's it. That's the premise. Great.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Just brilliant. So dark. So dark.
Okay. Just some great recommendations, which I will definitely check out for sure. Um, but yeah, something I did forget to ask you, and I do want to ask you is so you also had a startup called Banana Talk Media. I believe you
Yeah,
were,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
startup is a very strong word. Startup means you have seed
okay.
capital and all that jazz.
Okay. So,
Mine
what do
was
I call?
more it's a social collective, so to speak.
Ah,
So
okay.
basically, the idea was like it was at a time where I didn't know the ABC of business. I've always been creative, no, so I don't look at the business side of things. Creative people just like go and like do creative things. So this is after I graduated FTI, and I had worked on a feature film down south in Malayalam. And so after that, I was basically sitting waiting for work, and me and a friend were writing a movie script together again for Malayalam project. And around that time, I was I was thinking, I was toying with the idea of starting a production house of sorts, which where we could like shoot ads and like stuff like corporate videos and that sort of thing. Because I did want to like sort of stick around Cochin because I was more interested in working in the Malayalam industry.
Mm-hmm.
So this friend was also very keen on like doing this thing. So me, him, we found a third guy. The three of us basically set up this thing, and over the next few months, we got like three more people in. So it was just six of us, six, seven of us actually, and very socialist sort of like a utopian setup. We go field for a project, whatever comes in, we'll split like on a ratio base, depending on like what work you've done, and that's how the company like will run. And then I realized, no, no, you need running capital. There is a P&L at the end of the month that you need to maintain, and then the overheads, which don't really like, like there are technicalities. You can't just run a business like this, like I mean, there's still like you have to pay rent and you have to do these
Yeah.
things. So I mean, we weren't doing too badly though. Like we were coasting by. We worked on about like 9 to 10 projects for a
Nice.
variety of clients. Yeah. And one of my last clients was actually ACK. So they were looking at for design work for some line of merchandise that they wanted doing. So I got in touch with them for that. Basically, the reason why, and it's a really terrible reason why, like I mean, funny reason why we shut it down, is I decided to get married, right?
Oh,
And yeah,
okay.
so my wife, she was based in Bangalore at the time, and she's like the more productive of us both. She's a data analyst, so
Okay.
nice, good, solid, like money making job that is not like creative wishy washy, like when the aaj hoga kal nahi hoga, you don't know what's happening. But so she's a data analyst, and she was working in Bangalore, and the idea was either I shift operations to Bangalore with Banana Talk, but I honestly wasn't. I mean, I had spent like a year and a half doing it, so I knew what it would take. Like in Cochin, there was always like I could cut down on other expenses because I was staying at home, and there wasn't as much. Bangalore means you need to start shelling out actual cash.
Yeah.
So and at that point, I remember meeting her dad for the first time. And he was asking me things like, okay, so what do you do? And I was like, I run this production house, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, what was your annual turnover last year?
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea what turnover meant. Okay. I was like, turnover, what the fuck, turnover? I made this much money, but company, I don't know. Like, like at which point I realized I should possibly look for a full-time job somewhere, and like go figure out the business side of things better and then come back and run a business. So thankfully, I shut shop without actually losing any money. Like
Okay.
whatever we put in, we made back. And like I was like, so I was also like, okay, this is a good time to like before I start digging a hole and like going in. So I had enough money like saved up to like shift to Bombay and start
Nice.
from scratch. And yeah, so it wasn't a complete like failure. In fact, uh, I always see it as a very like sort of educational experience. Like, I learned what it takes to run a business, what I need to be in, and I always used to have like when you're younger and you start working, you always think, yeah, these bosses they don't know what they're doing. Why can't they just pay more here? Why can't they do less here? Like, and then you realize it's not as like black and white as you think it is.
Yeah.
There is a lot of other things that go into running a business, and there are like factors you need to keep in mind, which I learned, and I was able to bring that experience to my time at ACK. I feel, especially when it came to me actively running Tinkle on from an editorial perspective, like for the last 2 years. That really helped in terms of like budgeting and like in terms of like
Yeah.
this is the margins you need to keep, or this is how much you need to be charging, how to charge. Like I didn't know how much you should charge for a project.
Okay,
This is
wow.
a terrible thing. Like like you. So I was pitching way below what like the market rate was because I was like, yeah, it only take us this much money to do it. But what is the company making? Like, we're socialist. Everyone will get the money. It's great. You know And then I realized, oh no, this is how like you need to keep margins aside, you need to factor for this cost, you need to like keep this in mind, or then there's taxes that you need to figure out. So huge respect for people who run like their own businesses nowadays, like because it takes a lot. It takes a village.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really does. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
but
No,
yeah,
but it's really cool. You had an entrepreneurial journey in a
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
And who knows, maybe Banana Talk will make a comeback.
yeah. That's what we're all counting on. So my partner from then, he runs his own agency in Bangalore now.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
so I mean, so I'm actually glad, like a lot of the guys I work with, they weren't interested in film till before they started working in Banana Talk. And a couple of them actually went on, he studied at um, the Adyar Institute in Chennai.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so he went on to do like sound engineering and whatever from there. A couple of other guys started working at ad agencies proper. So they all sort of like switched careers because of Banana Talk, Like so,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, okay, like it's nice, like the Banana Talk like served a purpose, and these like six guys managed to like start their careers in like this field. So he's doing really good work now. Like he's got a small this thing. It's called 14KT,
Okay.
and yeah, they're doing good work in Bangalore. They're picking up a bunch of like clients. So Ather, the scooters, he just did a project for Ather and all that. So it's nice to see how far they've come. Yeah,
No, that's amazing that, it was the start for, I think, so many people for different things. But yeah, now we're coming towards the end of this interview, and we always end with these last two questions. So the first one is, what are your aspirations? What are you looking forward to in the near or even distant future? And this can be personal, professional, creative, whatever.
um, so I am actively hoping to get my 1 hour special up and running by the end of this year.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so yeah, so I've set a goal for myself is that next year for the Edinburgh Fringe festival that happens in Edinburgh, I should have a show that I can take there. So
Mm,
this entire year is basically for me to like sort of workshop my material and build it to a tight 1 hour that I can like shop around. So that is definitely something I'm looking forward to, like on the stand-up front. Professionally, I hope to land a job, a real job, very soon because stand-up is great and the freelance thing is great, and but I think I've been spoilt by my time with Tinkle and ACK where I got that, that monthly paycheck. And again, because of my time at Banana Talk, I'm very wary of being without that monthly paycheck now, because that was a hand to mouth time. Uh, so yeah, I'm hoping to like sort of restart my career a little bit. I want to switch to the world of advertising because that's something that's always fascinated me, and I've never actually worked in a traditional advertising agency. I've
okay.
done advertising work, like in the sense I've shot ads, I've done brand videos, and I've worked on a bunch of branded projects, but never at an actual agency. So I really want to like sort of see if I can do that and like that'll be a fun route to take and like make interesting campaigns that resonate on like like a global because you're
Yeah.
in when I'm here like this is where I can really do that and they're doing so much they don't have like restrictions the way they do back home in terms of what you can show what you can do what sensibilities are like so I really want to like sort of push the envelope there and work with brands that have money to like spend on these things also I feel like that also makes a huge difference so yeah, but otherwise we're settling in. Like I mean, like it's like I'm actually like starting out all over again. So I'm in a really fun phase of my life where I'm like in this new country and like everything's from scratch. So it's a little worrying, but also I've realized like I'm able to like again very lucky guy. I'm so blessed. I always have nothing but gratitude for like my circumstances in life.
Yeah.
Like even without like a job or anything, I still have enough money coming in, doing like random things for random people. So hopefully, like I'll settle in nicely here. My daughter will grow up to be a well-adjusted human being. And these are the aspirations I have. I hope she adjusts to life here. For her, it's like I mean, she's 3, so like she's gonna start going to school very soon and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And touch wood for all that and hopefully more to come. And finally, what is a piece of advice or learning you'd like to share? Again, this can be personal, professional, but basically something you've sort of experienced for yourself in life and wish more people were aware of.
So yeah, one like I mean, so this exactly the fact that that if there is something that excites you, like on like what do you say, artistic level or a creative level, like say for me it was like filmmaking and stand up, right? And I've always regretted that I didn't know I could do these things earlier.
Ah,
Like I could have gone to like New York Film Academy and like studied film, like in my bachelor's rather than. And would I swap it out for what I did? I don't think so, because again, I had such a fun time where I went to college eventually, and I wouldn't have those friends I do today. So there's nothing that like I would want to change in my life. But at the same time, if there's something that excites you and you feel like you can do it, but you don't know where to start, just Google it. You will find places where to start and do it. Like don't put that off for like later. Like for me again, like I do want to like get my Malayalam movie out there one day, and that's currently right at the back of like my things to do. But I will do it, like but
yeah.
I have so many other things also that I want to do like in the middle. But yeah, like don't put it off. Like you can watch a little less Netflix. I mean, like a very personal. I watch way too much TV. So I'm not. So like, I know I'm actively trying to curtail screen time. Like my daughter shouldn't watch. So I also won't watch. I'll work in that time. So I'm using her as an excuse to get me to like get my life straight.
Wow.
So most parents I think do. So yeah.
And on that note, we've now come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being on Kuriakose. It was lovely talking to you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. Again, I don't think I'm qualified enough to be a part of these things, but okay, if you feel it was worth your time, then
Thank you. So that was my conversation with Kuriakose Vaisian. That was a really fascinating conversation and life story to hear. Closing this episode with an article written and narrated by Kuriakose. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
okay. So this is a piece I wrote for the Indian Express, and it came out on the 1st of March, if I'm not mistaken. And it was against the backdrop of the Dilbert comic strip author, Mr. Scott Adams, and this racist tirade that he went on on his YouTube podcast show. Yeah, so this piece is called "Will the Real Dilbert Please Stand Up?" When I was a kid, the only page that appealed to me in the newspaper was the comics page. I would devour strip after strip, from Dennis the Menace to Haggard the Horrible, Garfield to Beetle Bailey. While the majority of syndicated strips could be easily understood by an 8-year-old like myself at the time, there was one strip that went right over my head. It took me almost another 8 years to finally understand Dilbert and his utterly dysfunctional workplace. Dripping with corporate ennui and workplace cynicism, Dilbert became relatable content max when I started working in my early 20s. The series had every single office caricature you could imagine: the underqualified, overpaid, borderline evil boss man, that sycophantic coworker who appears hardworking yet hardly works, those idea guys from marketing with lots of faff and little follow through. Dilbert's creator Scott Adams literally painted a picture, three to be exact, on a weekly basis that every person who had worked a 9 to 5 gig could identify with. I used to assume that Adams identified with Dilbert himself, the almost singularly sane, if slightly hapless voice of reason in an anti labor hellhole of an office. But at some point over the last decade or so, it seems Adams started metamorphosing into Dilbert's pointy head boss, who has little regard for racial and gender sensitivity. His most recent escapade saw him label a group of POC survey respondents as a hate group because they did not agree with or couldn't decide if it was okay to be white. On the face of it, that might seem like an alarming stance to take as a respondent. After all, being white in itself should not be considered problematic. However, what Adams might not have realized is that the slogan itself, "It's okay to be white," has become a rallying cry for white supremacists and neo Nazi groups in the United States. Of course, we can always give Adams the leeway that this was meant not as a pure truth, but more as a joke. Admittedly, if it was a joke, it was a terrible one. Not only did the joke not land, it horribly mangled its maker's career in the process. Since his comments came to light, more than 100 newspapers and publishing houses have severe ties with the author. In fact, Adams himself has said that most of my income will be gone by next week and that my reputation for the rest of my life is destroyed. However, this isn't the first time Adams has come out with rather bizarre opinions about race and gender. From comparing women asking for pay parity to bratty children demanding candy, to identifying as black because I like to be on the winning team, it's evident that Adams does feel he is persecuted against as a white cis male in today's modern world. He has claimed the Dilbert animated series was cancelled by UPN because they wanted more gender diverse content, and there were two other corporate jobs he lost out on because of his skin color. In one of his more recent strips, a black employee is perturbed because he is recommended for a promotion just because he is a person of color. Of course, said black employee throws his integrity out the window when the promotion comes with a massive pay hike. Then there's Adam's problem with wokeness, evident in another Dilbert strip, where employees are informed performance reviews now have a wokeness meter, and questioning it leads to a deduction in your wokeness score. The irony that Adams is complaining about being discriminated against for being white in America is hard to miss. After all, this is the same country where George Floyd was killed by an on duty police officer in broad daylight in front of a host of eyewitnesses. In lots of ways, race is to the US the way caste is to India. Some are afraid they might lose out on career and educational opportunities because of caste based reservations. At the same time, in another part of the country, a young Dalit boy is beaten to death for touching a drinking water pot. Becoming more woke isn't a bad thing. If anything, it makes us less ignorant. And ignorance can be dangerous. You end up sitting on someone's neck and killing them, or beating little children to death. So, Mr. Adams, in summation, is it okay to be white in today's world? I don't know. Is it easier to be white? Unfortunately, it is, yes.